make a note of that. But if you're ever feeling that you can't handle it, I'm there for you.
Okay, folks, we'll call the meeting to order as it is 7 o'clock. You have agenda before you. Is there any motion on the agenda from anyone?
I move that we adopt it.
Councillor Evans moves adoption. Seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried. Open for question period. Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, we'll move to disclosure of interest. You've all had the agenda for a bit. Any disclosures of interest to make tonight? Hearing none, we shall move to item 4, which is the minutes. You've all had that for a few days. Regular council meeting on February 11th. Moved by Councillor Evans.
I move the adoption, but I want to speak to it afterwards.
All right. Moved by Councillor Evans. Seconded by Councillor Black. Councillor Evans, you wish to?
Yeah. I'm just going to bring it up. Under personnel, it says, Councillor Bill Evans noted that the personnel report could be found on page 37. Councillor Black read the highlights from within the report. I believe I did both, and that's why Councillor Black will do the personnel report this month. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll make that adjustment. Any other comments on the minutes? We need a friendly motion for adopting that change?
Yeah, just as
amended.
Yeah.
As amended?
But
Okay.
I should point out that other than that, they were flawless.
Okay, so the motion is as amended. Question?
Question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? I do not have any. Any others? No. Hearing none. So it moves to Southeast Regional Services Commission, starting with myself. Many of you have heard about what went on February 26th. The thrust of the meeting held to do with a presentation on the proposed Regional Destination Marketing Organization, the RDMO, which we've talked about many times over the last year or so, about creating a marketing opportunity and organizational structure for the southeast region of the New Brunswick. And both the Regional Service Commission and the City of Moncton had put money into complementary studies, and they came back suggesting that there was a symbiotic relation between the hotels in downtown Moncton and the attractions, which were all outside of Moncton, other than the title board perhaps, that it made a lot of sense on all of the tourism bases of activities and attractions and costs, et cetera, that it should be a regional approach, which is what we had thought might come out of it. What's most important, I think, is that at the end of it, and the Service Commission did adopt the recommendation to move ahead. There were 7 steps that you may have seen. I believe we've sent you the PowerPoint, and there's a hard copy in the councilor's room. But it spoke about do create an RDMO, illustrate and create the partnerships and alliances that are necessary for this to work. What are the bodies that need to be involved, and how do they need to be involved, and clarify that. Create a destination brand for the area. We do not have something that people recognize that covers this area in any particular way. So we need to have a brand based that covers all of Southeast New Brunswick without a specific site being the only focus on that. Number 4 was to create an experiential strategy. Most visitors are looking for experiences, and you need to create a strategy that enhances the experiences for people when they come here so that they want to come back. Assets and infrastructure growth plan was number 5 on that list. that there is a need to upgrade some of the infrastructure, some of the assets, and to invest in them in the long term, and to make them more attractive as we come along that. Interestingly, transportation channels, and by that, transportation channels is how do you get from the airport to your hotel? How do you get from the hotel to this place you want to go, whether it's Shediac Beach or Fundy Park or Sackville? What are the roads like? What are some of the impressions you're going to get when you go between places, and can you get there easily and happily, or are you going to get interrupted? And finally, a strategic plan based on all of this so that it can be implemented in a rational way. As you know, that this was always based upon the concept of a hotel levy. That has been accepted as the fundamental budget basis of this. A 4% is adopted. A 4% is recommended, which is what it happens in Ottawa. And Ottawa has a regional strategy much like this, with the idea that people go downtown and then they go around the area. And the idea would be that with that 4%, 3% would go to the cost of all this marketing activities, and 1% to improving the assets, improving the tourist destination sites. So that was what the recommendation is, and in the long term, it is expected that with the minor amount that we've put in through the Southeast Regional Service Commission, and I remind you that this council is the one that cut that budget in half, and that half budget that they proposed is now going to be the ongoing contribution. That ongoing contribution is far smaller than what we paid for Cultural Coast prior to that. So now we're into this regional body at a lower cost. So I think it's a really important development, lots more to go. It will be governed by a board that is based upon business tourism operators. That's who will be sitting on the boards. And there'll be an interim board, and then there will be a move to that long-term board. There is some difficulties, perhaps politically, with getting the hotel levy and the legislation required for that to happen, but the skeleton for it is there. So that was what dominated the last meeting. Happy to talk about that in more detail, or we perhaps can put it on to a presentation one evening if it comes to lots of details. Councillor Black.
I just had a quick question. Is there any way, or can we, or email somebody for us to be able to get the minutes from the SERSC a little earlier? Like, we had the January 29th meeting sent to us March 3rd, but it'd be nice to kind of see the notes from that a little earlier, so that when we get into our council meeting, we can read through it and just have a bit more information. Is that possible?
You do get them once they're approved by the board, which means you have to wait a month before the board approves it, and then they tend to get sent out within the couple of days after that.
Okay.
So it's still draft until they accept it, unfortunately.
Okay.
But certainly welcome to ask me of any questions on it. Councillor Evans.
You mentioned it, but I just want to clarify. The new Local Governance Act allows for things like hotel taxes, but it requires enabling legislation, so that the Regional Service Commission has said this is what we want to do. It requires the legislation. What efforts have they made, or what assurances are there from the provincial government that that will be forthcoming? Can you speak to that?
I can't give a definitive, but what we left the province with an understanding was that we would have a regional strategy with meat on that bones, and then at that point, when there was some business interest in it and some business interest in governing it, then we would go back and ask for that enabling legislation. So, because it was really just a wish when we asked about it a year ago, there was no structure attached to it. So, okay, Councillor Michaud.
Just, I guess, on that, and then I had another question as well. So at some point in time, in order for operators within the region to better understand this, will they going to be venturing out and doing presentations so that it becomes a little more local and they can understand the impact it'll have?
It's been about 2 years where there's been a whole variety of workshops with the operators, and it was recognized early on that if you're going to create a levy, those who are going to pay the levy have to buy into it. So there is a very strong backing from the tourism locally of how this might work. It still has to be explained. It's a new structure for this province, so No one else is doing it except down here.
Right.
So you're absolutely right, it's got to get out, and they're meeting individual groups as we start to roll it out.
Great. And my other question, actually, in reviewing the minutes from November and January, there were some subcommittees created. One of them in specific to policing and also, I think, water, regional water system management and local governance taxation. And I noticed in the last meeting, there was some reviews that had already happened, and I think they're working on the Sackville, reviewing the Sackville model right now for policing. And I'm just kind of wondering if you have any more information on what the whole premise around that, what they hope to be able to get to in regards to doing this type of subcommittee work.
Yeah, we had a couple of discussions here at council prior to you joining about making sure that our voice was heard, that we wanted to be clear in our involvement in some of those items, that there wasn't a presumption of an end. And unfortunately, some of the stuff sounded to me and to others that somebody had decided what that model was they wanted to get to. And so we adjusted the terms of reference of all of those subcommittees to move it back to inventorying and considering what the various models are out there, and then moving to more of a evaluation of the various models and what those are. So there has been, on the policing one, all of the local models have been asked for some basic input, and I spoke to the executive director at the last meeting outside of the meeting and said, that contract alone doesn't tell you very much about what we've done and how we manage. It doesn't talk about the relationship with accountability and how we are kept up to date compared to other places. So we've asked that they come down here and have a more detailed understanding of that as part of our model. We don't want it portrayed incorrectly. So I'll mention my suggestion on a couple of those subcommittees. So it was created as a strategic planning committee of the board, and the board has endorsed the 3 areas as areas for it to look into: policing, local government, and water and waste commission. And the suggestion that I put on the table was that those who are not members of a regional service so far should have an informed opt-in right. It's not an assumption that if you create something, everybody must join. It was based, the Regional Service Commission model was based upon the Regional Service Commission in BC, and it is an informed opt-in process, so that you have to demonstrate why there is value in people coming in to take that regional service. And to me, that continues to be the criteria by which any new services which are not legislated, which are not required and mandatory, should meet that criteria. So that is how I see the now working committees getting that information, then bringing it back to the board with, in my view, that's the criteria that they would have to do. Okay? Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I just recalled that we went to some of us went to a UMNB zone meeting, and we haven't given a report yet. But one of the things that came up was both the president of UNBNB and the executive director said that among the regional service commissions, because we have a history of not being particularly happy with the genesis of this and how it may have unfolded, we are the best functioning one in the province, and they go from us down to a group which is effectively non-functioning, they don't meet. So I think that's useful information, that as frustrated as we are with some of the initiatives and perhaps the process in its creation, we are the best example, our region is the best example of a regional service commission. I think that was a significant point for me to hear.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? The only other thing that we did note that I think you should know about is that the Regional Service Commission feels it's reaching a state where we don't have to meet every month, and there is going to be a decision on that in the near future, that perhaps the last few meetings have been quite short, other than the presentation of the tourism, where we would have been a very, very short meeting. So they will advise us at our next meeting of what they're proposing. They feel that they've now got lots of stuff underway, so it doesn't all need to be approved on a regular basis. It can go ahead and then come back at a more timely amount of time to the board. So we suspect it'll be reduced with a from a target originally of 12 to probably 7 or 8 a year, which will be helpful in many ways, I think. Okay? Okay, so that's my report on the Regional Service Commission. If there's no other questions from me, I'll turn over the second part to Ms. Bickford.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the month of February, there was one permit issued. This brings our year-to-date total to be 6 permits with a construction value of $19,000. Again, it's early in the season, so it's not generally uncommon to see the lower numbers at this time of year. We also did meet in February with the Southeast Regional Service Commission Planning Review and Adjustment Committee, and that committee reviewed one application that involved the town of Sackville, and that was an insubstantial amendment request for Pizant's Home Hardware, which was looking at making signs, making changes to their signage as well as to some of the facade around the entrance areas of the building. Just to clarify what an insubstantial amendment is under the highway commercial areas, when they were originally developed, they were all developed individually under separate development agreements. At the time when council was doing all these agreements, they recognized that to change an agreement, it required a lengthy process to go through council, hold another public hearing for some things that were considered insubstantial, like changes to signage and that sort of thing. So as a result, they introduced a clause which was called an insubstantial amendment clause, and in it they gave that power to consider certain changes to the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. And in this particular development agreement, signage as well as the building appearance were 2 of the items that were targeted. So that's why you see what appears to be an amendment falling under this category rather than through a council process. Other projects that we continued to work on in February included the flood scenario mapping, compiling that data, doing some verification of the data, as well as doing the initial analysis of the mapping. And the other big item that the staff have been working on is the proposed draft building bylaw. So currently we have a building bylaw that is somewhat dated, has had a number of amendments that have been done to it over the years. So we're looking at bringing this together into one document and updating it to include the new Community Planning Act references that have occurred, as well as updating code requirements, what's required for permits nowadays versus what they were back when the bylaw was written. The other things we're looking at is including a listing of items that were exemptions, so things like siding, and spelling it out so any of the members of the public that are looking at the building bylaw would be able to see what triggers and what doesn't trigger a permit. Within there too as well, we do address electrical waivers, which are the absence of a building permit, but you need an electrical connection. So that's included in the bylaw as well. And although the fees in general for permits have stayed the same, we are looking at introducing a double fee for starting construction without a permit. So the other thing that's included as part of that bylaw would be a resolution, because before council can enact any bylaw under the Community Planning Act, they are required to seek the views and recommendations of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. So there is a resolution as well that accompanies that bylaw tonight. So if there's any questions?
No questions? Appreciate the clarity on the development agreement. I wasn't quite clear on that. Thanks for, so PRAC has some limited power to amend development agreements now.
Only if it was included in the original development agreement. So if it wasn't introduced in the, like some of the development agreements do not have insubstantial amendment clauses in them. So in that case, they're not allowed to address them. But in this particular one, they are.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on planning? Now, do we have motions at this point? Councillor Black, do you have that?
I move that whereas council has considered repealing bylaw number 46, the building bylaw, and replacing it with bylaw number 266, a bylaw relating to buildings in the town of Sackville, a revised building bylaw. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Sackville directs that the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their views as per section 110(1) of the Community Planning Act. I move that council give first, okay, right, sorry.
That's the motion, the two paragraphs? Okay. Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Evans, please.
I just want to repeat something that I said privately, is that when changes like this come about, it would be really nice for us to see a differences file. And I think the standard format is you highlight the stuff that's being added, you strike through the stuff that's being removed, so that we can see how it's changed. Because I think there are a number of changes, but they're not substantial. They're so-called housekeeping, they're conforming to the new legislation. I don't think anything's changing dramatically, but I would like to be assured of that before I vote for it a third time, but I'm happy to support starting this process.
So a specific request to staff that we have a marked up copy that's easy to see. That'd be good. Any other questions? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Councillor Black?
I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 266, a bylaw relating to buildings in the town of Sackville.
Moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Evans. Open for points? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Black. Thank you, Ms. Bickford. It is now my pleasure to read a proclamation. Given the many outstanding accomplishments of Mount Allison Athletics, I am hereby declaring March 28th, 2019 as our 5th annual Mountie Day in recognition of the important contribution that Mount Allison Athletics makes to our community. In doing so, I encourage our council, our staff, and the entire Sackville community to show your support for Mount Allison Athletics on March 28th. Wear your garnet and gold, show your support in your home and business windows, and most of all, to continue to support our athletics and the various athletic programs. To show our support, the town will proudly fly the Mount Allison Athletics flag here at Town Hall on March 28th. So at this point, I'm not supposed to point out, but I will point out that the town gown, the second annual town gown again came to the town. Well, that's the third annual. The first one didn't count. So it also happens to be up here for this event, just to show the links between the Mount Allison Athletics and some of the town activities. On behalf of the town of Southville, I'd like to welcome Pierre Arsenault, Mount Allison's athletic director, and the Mount Allison men's basketball team to tonight's council meeting as we proclaim March 28th, Mountie Day in the town of Sackville. Led by Aram Curry, who was named an ACAA first-team All-Star, the men recently finished second in the National Basketball Championships, losing a close game to the #1 ranked team in the country. It's the second time in 3 years that the Mounties have made it to the championship game. We're certainly proud of the Mount Allison Athletics program, not only because of what you do on the court, the field, or the ice, but also because of the countless contributions you make to our community. Mount Allison athletes coach our kids, volunteer their time, help draw national attention to our town, and so much more. And for that, council and all of Sackville thanks you. I'd like now to invite Pierre up to the mic if he'd like to say a few words and introduce the team that's here tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Hyam, and good evening, Council. It's certainly a pleasure to be here again for the proclamation of Mountie Day. This being the 5th year, certainly we're as humbled by it as we were the first year, and appreciative this recognition and the town wanting to do this on our behalf. One of the things that over time that has really become important to our programs with Mounties Athletics is the relationship we do have with the community and the relationships in the greater context, but also on an individual level with all of our sports. And we, as much as anyone, get really excited to see the success of the local Sackville community programs and school programs as well. And you know, we certainly celebrate the Titans, what they've done with their football program. Today we signed our fourth Titan player as a recruit that will come join us, fourth this year, that will come join us in the fall program. So we're excited by that. And we now have 8 of our 9 varsity teams this year had at least one student athlete from the Sackville area play, and so that's certainly an important connection for us. It's worth noting that today, Sackville native Abby Beal and our Mounties head coach Terry Reinders were both selected to be part of Team Canada for the World University Games, and today in Russia they lost in an empty net goal 2-0 to Russia, the home team, in the gold medal game. And so Abby's coming home as a silver medalist from the World University Games and has lived her dream of playing for Team Canada. So we're certainly very proud of her, and Terry as well. And in the basketball world, our men's basketball program has developed a really nice relationship with the Titans basketball team as well, and with Coach Rob Lyon. And actually, the Titans played a game in our gym earlier the year as part of a triple header before our university teams played, and we were really excited to see them win their provincial championship, and which is a wonderful accomplishment. So I'm going to just ask Coach Steve Chapman to come up, and he'll introduce the members of the team that were able to join us tonight. Coach Chapman is a Mount Allison grad and played basketball for us, coached, and actually has a teaching history here at the school system here in Sackville, and coached minor basketball growing up. And we're absolutely thrilled to have him leading our program and the job that he's doing. And as was mentioned, 2 times in the last 3 years, we've played in the league championship game. But as important as that, what I really admire and appreciate about Coach Chapman is it matters to him that these young men that he works with all year really understand the opportunity they have playing basketball at the university level, but also being at university and how that has an impact on the rest of their lives. And what he's teaching them about life and about surviving and excelling is something we really appreciate. So we'll ask him to come up and introduce the guys that are here tonight.
Good evening. We're a short staff here tonight, kind of like our whole year. We had a bunch of injuries, but it's midterm time, so my apologies for not a full team. But anyway, great bunch of guys, and I just wanted to quickly introduce. I could just stand Matthew Tanton from Summerside, Ite Adeki from Alberta, Bryden McDonald from my alma mater, Horton High School, and down in the valley. Matthew Baker from Rosse, first year. Mac Chisholm, 4th year guy from Fall River, Nova Scotia, the team captain. Aram Curry from Riverview, New Brunswick, 2nd year. In the back, our most valuable player is our manager, Mark Rogers from the down the valley, Bridgewater area. And then Brett Curtis from Harvey Corner. So, Harbor Station, sorry. So I don't think I've missed anyone. Anyway, thanks for allowing us to be here.
Okay, that was a nice interlude. We will now move on to Mayor's report. Council, you have a bare bones copy of Mayor's report. Canadian Press came and spent a couple of hours with both Mayor David Cogan of Amherst and myself here in this room, going over once again what the status of the risk is to this area for flooding. He appeared to be doing a national perspective. We haven't seen any written material as yet. He is speaking to a whole variety of people and was talking to, on his way to talk to a farmer on the Amherst side after our interview. He was concerned with the threat, concerned with responses, concerned with people, the rest of Canada, understanding what the threats are and the impacts of a flood through the isthmus here would be, and what the response has been from the various governments. So, as you know, we're still waiting for an announcement. I don't think we've heard one as yet on the study for the dikes, and we keep hearing that it's imminent, but we have not yet heard it. So it was a timely thing, and I hope that comes out fairly quick and soon. On the events, the Heritage Day at Town Hall, several of you were here for that as well. Education reform, I think I've voted before that Harvard University Education Redesign Group has adopted an approach to community-supported education. And it's a different approach than what Sackville Schools 2020 was talking about. It's a different approach from how education is normally reformed. And it is a process that is community-led and community stimulated as opposed to top-down. And we have had a couple of discussions with the principal and the superintendent about that approach. And there seems to be a pretty good reception that this isn't forcing teachers to change. This is giving them some opportunities, some more resources, some more people and volunteers that can help with that. We also took that approach to ACOA. And ACOA sees value in that they see an ongoing mismatch between the qualifications of people coming out of high school right now and the nature of jobs that the province has open. And so ACOA is considering to invest in this process, a community-based process, not provincial-led, but community-based, reform of pedagogical elements of elementary, secondary education, more experiential learning through community involvement, and creating graduates that will have a different set of skills that may better match the marketplace. So ACOA has said that they would be interested, and if they are, they're prepared to provide a small amount of money for the next 3 years to allow that process to go. And just an update is that, as you'll see, the MLA, I met with her on a couple of items, and this was one of them. And her feedback to the Minister of Education was very well received. I mean, we're not asking the province for any money. We're saying we want to see it happen locally. And so we are planning a meeting for later this week with the Minister of Education, who is intending to come here. We'll see if he shows. Their schedules change a lot. But if that does take place, and if we do get ACOA money, we will have something substantive to talk about next week in terms of community-supported education reform being led by this town for the province. MLA meeting, we're trying to do that on a fairly regular basis just to keep ourselves up to date on what's happening in town and what's happening in the province. UMNB, follow up to the resolution of the summertime in terms of accepted for action on a different approach to flooding around railways that is causing local governments across this country a great deal of headaches from culverts that are undersized, under-maintained, and there's no plan and no ability to influence those decisions. And so we did talk to UMNB, and I'm having another conversation with them this week about a potential way to create a pilot that will get some of these facts together so we can understand what the scope of this is. There was also lately, you probably saw today, UMNB has been putting out a couple of things looking for input on a variety of topics that are being raised with UMNB. And I'm forgetting what today's was. What, anybody?
Conflict resolution.
Conflict resolution of elected officials, looking for methods of, that they could perhaps offer to places. As somebody mentioned, the Service Commission that's no longer meeting. There are items like that, and there hasn't been a place to go to help resolve that. The province just simply doesn't do that anymore, if they ever did. So UMNB is much busier than we knew of them a couple of years ago, and I'm happy to see that they're looking at some of those items and trying to provide some services. Actually, I've had a couple of inquiries on new businesses. Can't talk about the details of them, but very interesting opportunities, and we'll continue to push to see if that comes, either of them or perhaps more. Miscellaneous. Fluctuating temperatures on all our infrastructure's got to be obviously a problem, and we're hearing that in multiple places, but some of the residents in particular are concerned with the sidewalks and what's happening with the sidewalks and how it's pooling up and freezing and what we might be doing about that, and we flagged that in terms of some opportunities to look for other places to see how that might work. I suspect it's going to become this freeze-thaw cycle is unusual, but if it becomes normal, it's going to change what we have to do with capital investment. Will not vote in favor. And met with Legion officials. They just a friendly session to try to stay on top of what was going on at the Legion and what we're doing. And the Legion is officially going to host the Bantam Legionnaires team, who 50 years ago won the provincial championship here in town, and it is their 50th year. Coincidentally, our Bantam Legionnaires team of this year is hosting the provincial championships for the B level here in town, and so there may be some overlap between the two, and there is a supper being set up at the Legion where both of the teams are being invited back. They may not be on the same dates, but the Legion has taken that on, so I appreciate what they're doing there. Parking tickets, we get complaints about that quite often. More inquiries from Ontario residents on moving here. A couple of things I also wanted you to know about. Opportunities New Brunswick has a survey on trying to facilitate perhaps working from home. So that has come out, and that might be a very good opportunity for us in terms of the nature of the type of people who might want to work out of this town. I was unable to make it to a presentation by the province on covered bridges in the province. However, the material seems to make it clear to me that while DTI owns those facilities, they're looking for ways to download that responsibility. So just be warned that we do have a covered bridge. That's why we were invited. And this was obviously around the province consultation with elected officials that is opening the door to something else. So something more will be coming, I'm sure, in terms of that. And finally, just today, I did, Councillor Michaud noted that they were setting up working groups, and I did put my name in as interested in the local government and taxation strategic group. And we'll see if that comes through or not. That is the one I chose to pursue. So that is mine. I have asked Deputy Mayor to speak about the Zone 2 meetings. So first, if there are any questions of what I've talked about, Councillor Finney, please.
Did you talk about the resident on future farmers market?
It was a personal interest in getting involved, and the request was, I think, an assumption was that the council appointed people to the board. That's what I got, but they really wanted to get involved with it and wanted to see where it was going and what the options and things were. And really the conversation came, well, you have to go talk to the board. I mean, it's not us, it's the board.
Someone who wants to try to help
Yes.
the farmers market.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Deputy Mayor, could you speak about the Zone 2 meeting?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Zone 2 meeting was held in Salisbury in February, and Councillor Evans and I attended. It was, we had there, which kind of surprised me, the president of UMNB and the, Wayne Sturgeon and the executive director, Margot Craig, were there. And they took up most of the meeting, sort of reporting on the advocacy they've been undertaking on behalf of the municipalities. The first thing surrounded the recent by-elections in New Brunswick for municipal office. Apparently, they couldn't run the by-election. People were wondering why it was postponed maybe until next May. The problem apparently is that Elections NB is very understaffed. Margot Craig described it, I think, as one heart attack away from collapse. So they, the pressures were they can't run 2 elections at the same time because they just don't have enough staff. And the other one was that the municipalities, some municipalities had so few councillors left that they didn't even have a quorum for a meeting. So what they came down to was, as we know, the election in December. And UMNB apparently advocated for that quite strongly, not to have it later. They are also pushing for the province to give municipalities 1/3 of the excess tax on cannabis sales. Not 1/3 of the tax, just 1/3 of the excise tax. I have no idea how much money that means, but that's what they're pushing for. They say they're building relationships with the government. It's a new government, new players, so they have to sort of establish these relationships again. But one thing they are pushing quite hard is municipal reform. And we'll just see how that plays out. They reported on the capital budget for the province that's coming down. And a bit of bad news is designated highway funding is supposed to drop to $10 million for the province, which means that, and there'd be no new projects undertaken. So it's going to be difficult to get the provincial designated highways fixed properly. The fall budget, or the full budget is coming out in March, and we're just waiting to see what that's going to be. They stress that municipalities are the key to economic growth. They also had a meeting with Premier Higgs. They talked about the cannabis excise tax, talked about infrastructure, and talked about municipal reform, and they said the Premier is quite vague on municipal reform. But they said that if municipalities were given more authority, they also needed the revenue to conduct the programs. The full municipalization is something that keeps coming up, sort of echoes of the Finn report. And they reported that the Regional Service Commission 8, which is Sussex-Hampton area, has been dissolved. It's now in a provincial trustee is now running it, and they're, I guess, in the process of seeing what they'll do. And it's all apparently over disagreements between the LSTs and the municipalities over taxation and funding, essentially things like our rink and so on. And finally, they were pushing too for a ban on plastics, and they want to cut it out at the producer level. Which is different, rather than saying banning it sort of at the retail level. They want to get the producers to have some penalty for producing plastics. I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but that's what they were after. And finally, they said the next meeting will be on May 4th in Riverside, Albert. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions on Zone 2? Councillor Evans, you were there. You want to supplement that?
Good job. The only thing I would add, as always, there's a discussion about unsightly premises. And it's chronic in the sense it happens all the time and it makes us sick, I think. It was really a little bit annoying that the deputy mayor, who was one of the hosts, she's one of our representatives on UNB, the deputy mayor of Riverview, was talking about their wonderful bylaws officer, someone they poached from the town of Sackville. But there was a lot of discussion about the problem of unsightly premises and how expensive it is, how difficult it is, how time-consuming it is to enforce the limited legislation we have. There was a hope that under the new act we would have more teeth. That doesn't seem to be there. This is a chronic problem, and it's going to be on the agenda of the next meeting, and people are going to talk about best practices, what they do that works. But it's a huge challenge, and it's a constant frustration, and that's probably why the deputy mayor didn't want to talk about it.
Okay. When you raised the president of UMNB's name, it reminded me that I did want one other thing that I had not written down, which was that I got a call from him last week. In a way, it was an awkward one for him because he was attending he had accepted to attend a meeting for a pipeline to be reopened, the debate around pipelines to be reopened in Montreal, and apparently someone said, well, you know, Sackville passed a motion against that. So he very uncomfortably asking, well, what am I doing? What are you doing? And I said, you know, our motion was clear. Council took a position. However, it shouldn't bother what you're there to represent every municipality in the province. And if there's going to be a pipeline coming again, that's your job to be there and understand it. So I'm not sure why you're calling us, but I appreciate that you did. And so it was awkward for him, but pretty clear. Okay, just wanted to add that in. Any other questions on Zone 2 or my reports? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to the CAO report, please.
Thank you, Worship. CAO reports on page 22 of the package, and once again, there's another busy month throughout all the different departments, and I think that's quite evident in review of the reports that are presented in the package as well. There's lots of information, details around the various programs, opportunities, and events that were happening in the past month. You'll also notice that staff are busy with preparation of tenders, and some of those motions are coming forward this evening, as well as some overtures around planning and preparations for spring and summer. So as I noted, there's a number of motions, and I'll leave the details and things to come out through the various reports as they're presented. But if there's any questions anyone has, I'd certainly be prepared to try and address and provide the answers for you.
Okay. Any questions for the CAO? Hearing none, we will move into Finance and Admin. Liaison Councillor, Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you, Worship. I move the council accept the bills and payrolls for the month of February 2019 as follows. General Government, $491,212.58. General Capital, $166,311.33. Utility Government, $34,437.91. Utility Capital, $52,244.50. And salaries, $185,574.42.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Have a report. Is that Deputy Mayor Aiken as well?
Thank you, Worship. The report appears on starting on page 25 of the package. And I have a summary here prepared by our treasurer. The auditors were in the week of March 4th to 8th to begin the 2018 audit work and review of financial information is expected. They'll continue this review through March and April with a presentation of the 2018 audit at the May Special Council meeting. Financial statements for the operating budgets are included to the end of December 2018 as of March 5th, 2019, which represents the statements to be nearly 100% complete, except for any final adjusting entries to be made by the auditors. We expect small surpluses in both general and utility. Some details relating to these numbers are listed within the report, but more details will be provided when the audit is presented in May. In accordance with the 2018 financials, a motion is being presented to submit to the Municipal Capital Board our 2018 financing requirements. For the budget year 2018, we will require long-term borrowing of $554,000, of which $260,000 is for general capital projects and $294,000 for utility capital projects. In December, it was estimated we'd be borrowing $473,000, which was the cost of a new fire truck, with the overall projections improving since estimates were done late November. Rather than borrowing the $473,000, we'll only require the noted $260,000 for general. We were able to charge back the cost of the excavator repair as well as the lift station upgrade and Bridge Street work to capital out of revenue, thereby needing to borrow only $294,000 of the authorized $499,000 for utility. Overall, new debt will be lower than projected, which will improve our prior debt payment projection in 2020 budgets and beyond. Our hearing with the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board was on February 11th, 2019, and all items in the application were approved. For the town to use our next round of gas tax funding, which runs from 2019 to 2023, we are required to submit a capital investment plan to the province, which must be approved by them prior to spending any funds. Management met as a group and reviewed all the categories and projects that Sackville has available that would qualify for the following recommendations: that the 2019 to 2023 gas tax funding be allocated to paving, that other projects that would qualify be funded through our normal annual capital project budgets. The asset management plan was approved in February and has been submitted to the province for review. To date, nothing has been received back. Policies provided to continue to be reviewed and will be brought to council in the coming months. Dog tags for 2019 continue to be on sale at Town Hall. The deadline is the end of this month, and proof of rabies vaccinations must be presented at the time of registration. And a notice to this effect was put in all mailboxes in town this week, or last week. And finally, bylaw enforcement and animal control statistics for February are appended to the end of the report. That's the report, Your Worship. I'll pass it to the treasurer to entertain questions.
Councillor Evans?
Two things. I want to commend staff the same way I did in December when we're lucky, we do smart stuff with the windfall. And so I really like what we did when it turned out that circumstances fell in our favor. And I would just like to ask the treasurer to explain a little bit. I think I understand it. In order for the Regional Service Commission to compensate us for the local service district's share of our fire capital expenses, we used to have to borrow the money. And so they have changed a regulation or a practice? Is that what happened? Because we're not borrowing as much, and we only would have borrowed it because we thought we had to. So can you just clarify that for me?
Yeah, correct. Each year we submit our budget for fire, our prior audits and things, and then the formula is created to figure out how much the local service district will pay for fire protection. The practice has been that you would have to borrow in order for it to be allocated within that. But over the years, we've had many discussions, and we haven't been borrowing other than for heavy equipment, the fire trucks. And we have been allocating our other capital items within the budget. So recently as a few weeks ago to a month ago, discussion with Daniel Gauguin is that he has agreed that any equipment not borrowed for would also be allocated over a 10-year life cycle. Of course, that will also help them in that they won't have to pay interest charges on that portion. So it has been a practice. There's no regulation on it, and that's the way it's been done. But he has agreed it does save the local service district's money as well by not having to pay interest on that portion.
Councillor Black, please.
I had a question and a couple of comments, but in the bylaw report, it says that there were 0 violations for 2-hour parking and 37 for overnight. Do you know if that's because people are seeing and knowing that there's 2-hour parking and where they're supposed to park? Or is it more that there's a focus on overnight parking because of plowing issues and things like that? Food. Yeah. Go ahead.
There's more focus on overnight parking at this time of the year. There has been some 2-hour parking done, not as much as will happen in the summertime, of course, but there's been no violation. As well, as we all know, our bylaw enforcement officer's got about 3 to 4 months in now, and during the month of February, we provided him with a lot of training on the dangerous and unsightly. He had a full day session with our legal representation and others in order to gain an understanding of that. So there was more training provided during February. So we didn't get out as many times, but the few times that we did get out for the 2-hour parking, there were no violations. So that was a good thing. But he's not out as much as he normally would be on the 2-hour through February, but will be getting back out in March and April.
I wanted to point out too that it's nice to see that we're putting our gas tax disbursements towards paving projects, which is kind of in line with our asset management plan. I was really happy to see that. But of note, when I was reading through the financials, the 2018 revenue exceeded budget projection by more than 500,000. Departments came in under budget expense projections except Public Works for valid reasons. More allocation was moved to capital out of revenue. And I wrote something down. This report represents the hard work by staff at all levels to ensure that the best interests of the town are always in mind. Delivering programs and great service to citizens of our town is what staff do. And while some of that may be regular duties, most of it requires a lot of hard work and dedication. Furthermore, anyone who works with a budget knows how difficult to project and even harder to stick to those projections. The fact that staff have been able to consistently work within set budgets, in this case exceed revenue generation, and fall under departmental spending, in most cases, is fantastic to see. And every citizen who pays for our town to function, and I'm sure that everyone would be happy to see that their money is being well spent. So I was just really, really pleased with that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Any other questions on the report? I too had the same question that Councillor Evans raised, but I'm also thinking of the resolution we took to UMNB about ongoing operational costs that are unfair. Hearing what you said, this was specific to large capital purchases, that they're indicating that they can now make a decision, an administrative decision to participate in that. Is there an opportunity for us to go after that same type of flexibility for ongoing operational costs?
For fire protection specifically is the formula, because there's a regulation dealing with how local service districts are funded for fire protection. So the practice had been the long-term borrowing versus non-borrowed items, capital out of revenue over the years. We have on other items, for example, we are going to be installing a generator potentially in the Civic Center in 2020. I've reached out to Daniel, and the CAO, myself, and others will be meeting with him in April to discuss how we can have the local service districts fund that. And the other topic will be how we get the local service districts to fund other things that we do, which references back to the resolution that was made. For example, our arena services, our baseball fields, any other our tourism services that they may participate in. So those will all be topics of discussion with Daniel. Not as easy as fire protection, because fire protection is a necessity. The other ones would require votes from local service districts, potentially public meetings within the local service districts, and other things. But he's going to lay out how we can go about doing it. And in Sackville's case, we have a substantial number of local service districts, not just one. So there is a little more complexity to it than if it was 1 or 2, even 3 local service districts. I think there's 8 to 10 different areas serviced through individual local service districts within our area. So we will be meeting with him in April and be able to report more information on that heading into May and in the summer.
Right, that's excellent news. And if I am selected to sit on that local government and taxation strategic planning committee of the service, I'd like to stay up to date on how that evolves, if you could. Okay. Deputy Mayor, you have a motion. Any other questions? Hearing none.
I move the council approve the document entitled Town of Sackville 5-Year Capital Investment Plan for the Gas Tax Funding Administrative Agreement 2019 to 2024 be adopted.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question?
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
I move that be it resolved that the treasurer be authorized to issue and sell to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation a municipality of Sackville, New Brunswick debenture in the principal amount of $554,000 on such terms and conditions as are recommended by the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation, and be it resolved that the municipality of Sackville, New Brunswick, agree to issue post-dated checks excuse me, payable to the New Brunswick Municipal Finance Corporation and when they are requested in payment of principal and interest charges on the above debenture.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Tower. Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, this is, it sounds a little bit like bragging, but I think I finally get it, because the problem is chronology. What we did earlier is that we got a spending authorization for the future so that we can get a line of credit for stuff we spend during the year. So that's for 2019. After doing that for 2019, this is the actual amount that we're going to borrow for 2018. And that always threw me off because the years are in the wrong order. But that's what happened. The treasurer is nodding. I feel really good. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Any questions on that? Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That will take, that is it not, for Finance and Admin? Tourism and Business Development. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Worship. The Tourism and Business Development Report appears on page 36 of the package, and I'll just touch on a few points here, and once I'm done, any questions for Mr. Kelly Spurls, and then Councillor Tower will have a motion. If you didn't get a chance to tune in this past March 9th at 12:30, CFTA is now airing a Sackville Arts and Culture monthly program hosted by Mr. Kelly Spurls, and it'll be on again March 13th at 6 p.m. And it's a monthly program that's now airing on CFTA. The Waterfowl Park Artist in Residence this year will be Andrew Wilson, and the Performing Artist in Residence this year will be Lee Wilton. The Bordertown Festival will take place May 22nd to 26th, and a preliminary schedule will be released very soon. Startup Sackville, Spring into Action Mixer for Businesses is March 20th, 6 to 8 at the Painted Pony, and all business people are invited to attend. And also, Sackville was featured in the Spring 2019 edition of Edit magazine, highlighted as a town to cherish. And I took some time to look up Edit magazine, and in the particulars for that particular issue, it does say, mention Sackville as one of the best places to live in North America. And that's all I have. If there's any questions, I guess.
Hard to top that. Councillor Butcher, please.
Thank you. I have a double question about the Waterfowl Park Artist in Residence and Performing Artist in Residence. Is the Performing Artist in Residence a new thing? I don't recall that from before. And I was just wondering if you could give me a bit of information on Andrew and Leah. It's not Andrew, my husband.
That's a hell of a way to find out.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a surprise for you. No, it in fact is the other Andrew Wilson. Last year we had Andrea Wilson, so this has confused me slightly. Andrew is actually, he's a professor at Mount Allison, but he does, he has a diploma in arts work as well, and he's going to be doing, the main part of his project is he's going to be doing a quilt that has themes related to the waterfowl park, and he's also going to be using dyes and other elements from the park to make the materials for the quilt. I should say he's doing that, but he actually has a big community involvement aspect with it as well. He's going to have a couple of workshops, one for adults and one for kids, where they will work on different sorts of ideas and motifs and actually do some of the quilting and some of the breaking down of the materials. So that's the main part of his project. And Leah Wilton is a young woman who is studying dance right now. She is going to do a project that involves a group of young people. She's going to work with them for, I think it's 5 or 6 weeks, and develop a short dance piece that's based on the park and being in the park, and it will be presented in the park, I believe, in sometime in early August. So, yeah, so we're really excited about both those projects, and as I say, more details will be released soon. We're just kind of finalizing with them the details about their presentations and that sort of stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Councillor Tower, you have a motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is in relation to our border town. I move that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the contract with Joel Plaskett to perform at the 2019 Border Town Festival in the amount of $7,000 plus HST.
Moved by Councillor Tower. Seconded by Councillor Black. Seconded by Councillor Black. Floor is open. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a couple questions, and I just kind of, I discussed them with Mr. Kelly Spurls earlier today, but I felt they'd be important to bring to the floor this evening. Just one of them in particular, I understand the budget for this entire event is $12,500. The $7,000, is this in addition? Is there monies collected from this? If there's any shortfall, does it come out of the $12,500? Exactly how does that work?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Miso. It's a good question. The budget is $12,500, but we do also have anticipated revenue from the presentation. So we've anticipated, I mean, we haven't set the ticket price yet, but we've anticipated a very low amount, about $2,500. I know in other places, Joel Plaska's tickets are going for $35 or $40, and he's selling out a lot of places. So the Vogue can hold about 250 people. So we're extremely confident that we'll make at least the $2,500. So the total budget is $12,500 plus the anticipated revenue. And as I explained to you a little bit earlier, I might take a moment to mention that we do look to give grants or subventions to town groups that are looking to do shows as well as part of Border Town, and we were able to fund everybody who applied for a grant. So this isn't in any way shortchanging the other groups. And part of the reason why we want to bring in a big act like Joel Plaskett is he draws a lot of attention to the festival. He has, I think, 60,000 followers on Twitter, something like that. So we'll bring a lot of attention to the town and to the festival. And hopefully we'll get people into town and provide some needed business activity towards the end of the month of May, which was our original plan with Border Town. So I'd be glad to answer any more questions.
Councillor Michaud, did you have another question? No, that's... Okay. Good. I think Councillor Evans was first.
This is what you would call a headliner, right? And was David Miles the equivalent last year? Is that? Yeah.
Every year we've had somebody. Yeah. Ron Hines, yeah.
I mean, I'm thrilled, because this is not my thing, and yet, back to back to back, these are performers that even I know about. So this is a big deal. This is huge. I'm happy that we're getting headliners of this quality.
Councillor Evans, Councillor Black.
I just want to say I'm super excited. I would buy a ticket right now if they were available. Joel Plaskett is a huge headliner. I think as far as musical acts go in the Maritimes, I think this is a top 5 pick, I think, for a lot of people. He's going to draw a huge crowd. I think the tickets will sell out super fast. Also, David Miles was a good one too, but hitting a younger audience. Joel Plaskett's been around for a long time, but his music speaks to younger and older generations. So I think this is a really fantastic choice, and I'm super, super excited. So thanks.
Is he bringing his dad again?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Councillor Tower?
Thank you, Your Worship. I I agree with Councillor Black. And one of the advantages we have by trying to kick off the tourism season with this is that we'll be at Saltscape and be able to pass this information on, because it really hits the people down there and they start taking note and are circling, which will help us and help all the local business around here. So it's a well done to you.
Councillor Finney, please.
Ron, can you tell me why this is just being brought forward now? This, you know, we're just hearing about it now.
I was going to make up a story, but the simple truth is we've never had a group that was this expensive. And when I was going through the contract last week and preparing to make the offer to him, I suddenly realized that it was over $6,000. So I approached Jamie to see if it was possible to move it into council, and he very graciously did some of the legwork, and this is why it's coming now. So, yeah.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Tower. Is there anything more there? And Councillor Michaud, that was good, right? Okay, thank you. We move to item E, public properties and facilities. Who is? Councillor Finney.
Engineering and Public Works. The month of February was another busy month. Winter control, several snow events to deal with, plowing, salting, sand, street sidewalks, cumulative snow in downtown area and narrow streets. Due to the abnormal temperature fluctuation in February, we were busy dealing with both snowstorms as well as rain, to freezing rain conditions throughout the month. Of course, the harsh winter has taken its toll on the streets and roads around town, and we'll probably turn around and get at those things right away in the spring. The potholes, some of them have been filled in. Of course, they're not staying because it's just not possible for it to stay in. We have a lot of work to do. The mechanics, of course, conducted ongoing maintenance and all the equipment, repaired all breakdowns to public works and rescue vehicles, etc. The utility department worked on our water meter replacement program through the month of February, and they'll continue to complete additional water meter replacements throughout the winter as time permits, as well as obtain water meter reads that were not obtained during the last meter read process while evaluating the meters to determine and fix the meters or MXU units as required. Okay, there was, I was wondering why that their water was down in Hillcrest. Due to the extreme cold weather that we experienced in February, the utility department had to deal with another water main break on Hillcrest Street, which affected approximately 30 customers who experienced low water pressure during the course of the water main repair. And the engineering department continued to work with Crandall Engineering Limited and the contractor Birch Hill Construction Limited on the construction of new storm water retention pond and related works project throughout the month of February. The construction of the retention pond is approximately 70% complete and is starting to take shape and is evident when traveling along St. James Street. Weather at times has been a challenge. However, the cold temperatures in February have helped the contractor in their efforts to make good progress throughout the month. The engineering department issued a tender, number 2019-04, 2019 street asphalt patching during the month of February. During the tender closing on February 20th, 4 tender bids were received, with cost and paving and contracting limited being the lowest bid. A motion will be coming forward during this regular council meeting. The engineering and corporate projects departments continue to work with Crandall Engineering and the Department of Local Government with respect to the EIA, conditions of the Phase 2 of the Lawrence Street Storm Water Mitigation Project, as well as the requirements for a potential additional retention pond at the quarry as part of the Phase 2 of the CWWF program. The engineering department continues to work on several other capital budget projects that were approved for 2019. Additional tenders will be developed and issued over the next several months. Staff continues to keep in touch with DTI regarding the replacement of the Carter Brooks Culvert Abateau project on Route 935. The contractor has completed the majority of the work at this time and has reopened a temporary gravel road for the remainder of the winter. They are expecting to complete the remaining work in the spring when weather conditions are adequate. We will provide further details as become available. The Tantamara Veterans Memorial Civic Center. The month of February saw the Civic Center with several hockey games from Mount Allison, TRHS, and minor hockey. There is lots of hockey left this season with the 4-on-4 challenge from March 22nd to March 28th. and Sackville Minor Hockey Club hosting the Bantam Beat Provincials from March 29th to 31st. Come on out to the Civic Center, enjoy some great hockey and a snack at the canteen, and enjoy yourself. The ice plant will be shut down on March 31st for the season, and building and plant maintenance will begin. The Civic Center is open during the operational hours, even in inclement weather or during a power outage for citizens to get warm and charge devices. If the power is out at the Civic Center, the building will still be open, but warming and charging will not be possible as there isn't any backup power in the Civic Center at this time. Municipal parks. With the change in weather, the public is asked to use caution on any waterway as the ice conditions change daily. Public Works will be plowing the rail bed and the main trail in the Waterfall Park that connects to Main Street. Please note that the boardwalks and the trails in the wooded area will not be maintained during the winter months. So please use caution on the trails as they may be slippery. Park staff, along with the Public Works, will be maintaining the walking trail around the upper loop at Beach Hill Park this winter. 2 of the disc golf baskets have been stolen from Beach Hill Park. The RCMP are investigating as well as posting on social media to try and retrieve these baskets. These baskets are only available from one supplier in this area, and the public is asked to keep an eye out for the baskets. If found, please contact the RCMP so they can be recovered. Beach Hill Park is also a great place to get out and go snowshoeing on marked trails or get adventurous and make your own trails. The programming department have snowshoes to loan out. Submitted by Dwayne Acton, Town Engineer. There's some motions, I think.
Any questions? Sorry, Councilor Michaud first. Question on the report.
I suppose it could have come after the motion, but I did have some questions regards to the asphalt tender and just some information that Mr. Acton had provided for our meeting last week. The tenders came in higher than what was budgeted. I'm just curious because the motion tonight is for the budgeted amount. Your report indicates that we are, and I think we all are aware of the numerous amount of the thaw and freeze and what its effect it's had on our streets. With the reduction in tonnage, how much tonnage would be reduced? And in turn, how will that affect our abilities to be able to deal with the exuberant amount of potholes this year? And should we be looking at a means to maybe find some additional funds somewhere in order to prop that up so we can deal with this?
I think you're right. Let's have the motion, and then we'll get that answer, because I think it informs people's position on that motion.
Okay.
If you're okay with that?
Sure.
So we'll get that motion, and then I may have to ask you to repeat a couple of those.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it word for word, but.
Councilor Finney, the move.
I move that council award tender number 2019-04, street asphalt patching to the lowest bidder, Cost and Paving and Contracting Limited, in the reduced amount of $276,000, HST included.
Moved by Councilor Finney, seconded by Councilor Tower. You directed it to engineer? Are you okay with that question, or do you need him to repeat any elements of it, or?
Sure, I think I can
Okay.
go through that. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Yeah, in regards to the tender, it's the budget is $276,000. We're about $50,000 over budget. It is a per tonnage tender, and obviously what we intend to do is we're trying to stretch the budget as much as we can. We do please keep in mind that we've been using the gas tax funding to do roads, so there's various streets, several kilometers of streets that we've been able to do with the gas tax fund, which shouldn't need any patching. But if you drive around town, especially over the last few weeks, I definitely understand your point of view with the roads breaking up. But we're going to do our best we can to stretch the budget and to get over all of the areas that require patching within the budgeted amount. And as we proceed along, there may be a time where we have to reevaluate that and have that discussion with council if we find that we need additional funds to complete the patching adequately.
So what is the amount in tonnage that we would have to reduce and this year based on the pricing that came in. Like what did we tender for tonnage wise? And then as a follow-up to that, I guess, when it comes to this price, this isn't just the cost of the asphalt, we're talking the cost of the actual work being done as well, right? So, is that correct?
So in regards to the, based on the tendered tonnage price, it was $335 a ton. So that works out to be about 148 tons that we was reduced from 7. And we put the tender out, I believe it was 700 tons we had budgeted for. So it will be reduced by 148 tons off of that to bring us down to that budgeted number. And know that the price, the tendered price, $335 is put in place. There's no additional charge on top of that. It's per tonnage.
I guess one thing, that per tonnage includes the cost of actually the operation crew. They're not just charging for the asphalt, they would charge their time as well, right? That's included in that price.
It's all included in the price. Yep, installed in place.
Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none. Question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Finney, you have another one?
I move the council approve the breakdown for the 2019 gas tax fund for paving projects in the amount of $367,359 with the following streets and estimated distances to be completed. A. Walker Road, 1,000 meters. B. Stanley Drive, 1,000 meters. C. Hessler Drive, 85 meters. D. University Avenue, 135 meters.
Moved by Councillor Finney, seconded by Councillor Evans. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. I think, is that it for you, Councillor Finney? Thank you. We move to item F, Recreation Programs and Events. Councillor O'Neill, is that you, or is it Councillor Finney?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I've just been told here the first word in the report's ukulele. That's just one of the initiatives that the town supports. Trailblazers, Aquasize, seniors, aerobics, pickleball are continuing. After the success of their new Lego program for preschoolers, they will be continuing the program on Wednesday mornings. They are also accepting nominations for the 2019 class to the Sackville Arts Wall. Nomination forms can be found at www.sackville.com, and those are due May the 10th, 2019. With perfect weather, Sackville Winterfest was a huge success with a great attendance at all events, and well done. It was a great weekend. March break activities are underway, and many events have full registrations. Mountie Day will be held March the 28th with a flag raising here at the town at 11 a.m. And residents and businesses are encouraged again to show their pride by displaying the garnet and gold. April is Poetry Month. There will be a wide variety of programs and initiatives offered again this year in partnership with the schools and our new poet laureate, Shoshana Wingate. The town was approved for $38,400 enabling accessibility funding grant with the federal government. This funding will allow us to complete phase 2 of the natural playground project at Lilas Fawcett Park. A motion to award the phase 2 will be presented in a few minutes. We'll also be hosting the Muddy River Rollers Roller Derby team on April the 13th at the Tanamar Veterans Memorial Civic Center. They will be playing an exhibition game followed by a retro roller disco later in the evening. Stay tuned for details. On June the 1st, 2019, the department will be partnering with the Maritime Federation of Model Railroaders to offer a model railway show at the Tanamar Veterans Memorial Civic Center. This show will be open to the public from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and will cost $5 per person, with children under 12 attending free. Due to the cancellation of the special council meeting on March the 4th, The draft recreation master plan will be presented to council next month on April the 1st. With the library, it continues to bring in more people than all other one-person and even the two-person libraries in the region. Only Moncton, Dieppe, Riverview, and Shediac have more library users. A total of 1,402 people visited the library in February, and the basement meeting room was used 12 times during the month. The library offered a Winterfest Madness event on a Friday evening and attracted 195 people between the hours of 6 to 9. Saturday morning family drop-in program has been very successful, attracting anywhere from 15 to 45 participants weekly.
Any questions on the report? Councilor Finney?
I just want to say, as a matter of fact, when we had the discussion group canceled on the 4th, I took for granted that it would be on the 5th. When I arrived here, the council chambers was loaded with kids. It was nice to see, though. As a matter of fact, they were having lots of fun playing games and everything, but it took me by surprise. Pardon? Did you stay? I stayed, what, half an hour maybe? Yeah. So, but it was nice to see them, and I hope we have another one like that.
Did you win any games? Or?
No, I don't play games. I haven't got time. I'm a very serious person. I'll tell good jokes to you.
All right, thank you. You have a motion, Councilor O'Neill?
I move that council award Phase 2 of the Natural Playground Project at Lilas Fawcett Park in the amount of $50,485, HST included, to Cobequid Trail Consulting and authorize mayor and clerk to sign and seal the funding agreement with the Minister of Employment and Social Development and any other related documents in the amount of $38,400 to be used towards the completion of the Natural Playground Project Phase 2.
Moved by Councilor O'Neill, seconded by Councilor Tower. Councilor Evans.
I'm really pleased that this is going ahead, that we're being able to do the second phase so quickly after the first phase. I mean, back to back. I recall there being some conditions on the funding, that in order to get some funding, we had to, I don't know, do a certain amount or get a certain amount of money or something like this, and I'm pleased that we qualified. Because do you recall that in order to be eligible for this, we had to have a certain amount of money, or it had to be of a certain scale? Can you speak to that? Because I'm delighted that it's worked out.
No, I think what you're referring to, Councillor, is the various grant programs required a certain amount of commitment, financial commitment, just to be able to offset the costs of the grant. So to subsidize the grant request, essentially. So once we had confirmed that we were receiving money from the province, then we were eligible for the federal grant. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Michaud?
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have a couple of questions. I just wanted to get some clarity. I did some research where I wasn't a member of council when Phase 1 was approved, and just wanted to get an understanding in regards to, you know, the equipment there needed to be replaced. It was aging. Had the municipality gone ahead and done kind of like an item per item replacement to brought it up to grade as opposed to going to this route, what would the value of that have been in comparison to what the municipality is actually contributing now, including the 20,000 in kind that was identified that would come from town staff and our materials?
Mr. Cole, are you?
Thank you, Mr. Michaud. Actually, we started off the program at Lilas Fawcett Park, going to do it piecemeal, a couple pieces at a time, because we had some stuff that's not the code any longer. And we probably over several years probably would have been looking at about $100,000 to replace all the equipment in that park. This way here, it's we were budgeting about $15,000 a year over several years. This way here, the project will be done in 2 years, and it'll be complete with other people's money instead of taxpayer money, or at least Sackville citizens' money.
Good. Councilor Blackman.
Yeah, it's more a comment, but I was out at the lake skating on the wonderful circle that's out there, which the town might want to think about at some point. I'm sure you've been asked already. And my kids had asked what the logs were all over the beach, and I had explained that this is the natural playground that's going to be built there. And I'm sure that they're biased in their opinion, but they were pretty excited that that park was going to get built, and they thought that it was a wonderful idea. I'll be speaking in favor of this motion just because I think it's a great thing too. But anyway, thank you.
Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill.
Sackville Fire and Rescue responded to 14 calls for service during the month of February, which included 7 commercial fire alarms, 3 motor vehicle collisions, 2 calls for assistance from Ambulance New Brunswick, 1 electrical fire, and 1 carbon monoxide alarm activation. Training sessions during the month were for auto extraction and self-contained breathing apparatus, and members also conducted station and equipment checks to ensure everything was in a state of readiness. The 110th Annual Firemen's Winter Carnival was held on February the 23rd. And the Sackville Fire and Rescue thanks all the local businesses, owners for their donations. Also, they want to thank their judges, Sean and Sherry Smart from Tannermere Electric, and Darren and Crystal Duncan from Brunswick Fry and Safety, and as well as all of the residents of Sackville that support them for this event. And I was there to watch, and it boggled my mind how these little children, like, I thought back 40 years ago when I used to go in the carnival, and it was basically all adults that were there skating. And the other night, I was amazed that I'm sure there were children there that were younger than 4 years old that were on skates and just whizzing. Anyway, it's a great night for everyone of all ages. I'll be bringing forth a motion this evening recommending purchase of 5 sets of Starfield line Baker gear and 5 sets of Hikes firefighting boots. This personnel protective equipment is an annual purchase which ensures the safety of our firefighters. The PPE replacement falls within the allocated budget for this capital project. On Sunday, as our clocks were turned ahead, the chief encourages all residents to change the batteries in their smoke alarms. And he also reminds, with a reminder that working smoke alarms saves lives. And the department 14th annual truck draw tickets are out and around at the different businesses. And again, the chief reminds us that we make sure we have a basic emergency kit prepared to last 72 hours in case of an emergency. That's all of the chief's report. If there's any questions, I'm sure he'd be pleased to answer them.
Any questions on fire? Sorry, Councillor Evans?
I have a comment and a question. The first comment is an observation that when Councillor O'Neill talked about going 40 years ago, she was in grade school. The question is, the question is, we all regularly have to deal with the price increases and inflation and everything. And I just want to know how the chief, I mean, the price of attending is 50 cents, and it's been 50 cents from my personal recollection forever.
Used to be 25.
What, yeah, I know, 40, yeah. When did it change from 25 cents? You have to ask Councillor O'Neill. That's a pretty good deal.
More of a comment than a question, I think. Councillor Michaud, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following up from a couple of meetings ago and the issue with the railroad crossing blockings, et cetera. I know that you had started to go down the road of looking into that and finding a means to work with CN in regards to clearing that up or making that happen faster in an emergency. I'm just kind of wondering how that's progressing and what kind of avenues are being put in place to ensure that help gets to those who need it if that type of thing is going on.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud, Your Worship, members of council. To date, we continue to work with CN on that exact topic. That being said, we haven't worked with them recently on moving forward with anything, but we continue talks within those discussions. As it relates to blockages within the industrial park or down at the Route 935-106 interchange, as discussed previously, we would put a fire truck across the tracks if we knew something was going to happen. We can't predict if there's going to be a rail incident, of course. Weather incidents we can predict. But that being said, the only way to get troops on the ground on the other side of the tracks, if all the exits were blocked off, would be to physically work with CN to have the train broken apart to allow one access point to get in at, or physically have members climb over the tracks to get trains to get in, or physically work with the RCMP to physically drop troops on the ground via helicopter.
CAO, please.
If I could just add a further comment to that situation, and also speaking with the RCMP, they were contacted in that incident and said within 20 minutes when they found out that the personnel on the train were looking to break apart the rail cars, only that they got the train moving within the 20 minutes, so it wasn't necessary to break the cars apart. And I also believe that CN has forwarded a list of personnel from kind of the maintenance side of things in the event that we needed to reach out to them again. So the follow-up has been done on both sides.
Thank you.
Your Worship, I have a motion before we're...
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I move that council approve the purchase of 5 sets of Starfield Lion bunker gear and 5 sets of Hikes firefighting boots from Micmac Fire and Safety Source Limited in the amount of $20,964.50, HST included.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Finney. Councillor Michaud.
Just a question that, and I'm just kind of referring back to the report that we didn't have a chance at our March 4th meeting to kind of go over your report. You indicate in that report that this company is the only company in Atlantic Canada that provides that type of gear. I guess, is there any other company in Canada that provides that gear? And also, is there other gear that would be more readily available by multiple suppliers in Atlantic Canada, to kind of give us maybe a bidding edge? And then my other piece to that is, have we ever looked into coordinating these type of purchases with other fire services within the region in order to maybe get us a better pricing?
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. As it relates to the Starfield Lion bunker gear that we currently have in service, we've been using Starfield Lion bunker gear for approximately 25 years. Very happy with the quality and workmanship of the gear to keep our members safe. To answer your question, there are other suppliers in the Quebec area that do supply Starfield Lion bunker gear, and I've asked the question to the supplier, which I have supporting documentation, indicating that if I did reach out to them and they were successful within the tender document, then they would only revert me back to the authorized supplier within the Atlantic Canada, because they have their own area that they can sell to, and Micmac Fire and Safety is the one that can sell to for the Atlantic Canada. As it relates to your question, as reaching out to see if we could bulk purchase, have not reached out to any other departments to see if they bulk purchase, if we could bulk purchase, because of the fact there's a multitude of departments using a multitude of different brands of bunker gear. I'm happy to say that Starfield Lion bunker gear has offered us the same price as last year, 2018, so we're paying the same set price for suits this year. However, as of April 1st, there will be an increase of 10%, more specifically due to the Kevlar within the product that will jack up the price. Thank you.
Thank you. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Police Services, Councillor Butcher, please.
Thank you. The Police Services report is found on page 44. Overall, calls for service in January were higher than last year. There was 89 versus 82, and February continues this trend with 100 calls this year versus 69 last year. Property crime was elevated in the district area in January, with a significant decrease in February after some enforcement disruptions. However, in Sackville, the statistics were fairly consistent throughout the year, but still saw a decrease in February. There was continued road traffic enforcement with a few check stops and speeding enforcement and impaired driving investigations. There were 30 tickets issued in January and 25 in February. On February 23rd, there was an ATV event, the Winter Border Blast 2019. It was organized by the Tantramar ATV Club. So police coordinated an operation with provincial public safety to provide some visibility and enforcement to the event to promote safety. Obviously, the event's held all over the detachment area, but many groups met in Sackville, so involved agencies were coordinated here. There were some tickets issued, but more importantly, a lot of positive comments about the presence of the police there. And that's the report.
So any questions on the police report? Hearing none, thank you, Councillor Butcher. We shall move to item number H, policy bylaw. Who's speaking? Councillor Butcher again.
So the report is found starting on page 47. We met on February 20th, and the staff continued to review bylaw number 251, a bylaw respecting the procedure and organization of council, including amending reference to the Municipality Act to the Local Governance Act. Staff have prepared a small survey that was forwarded out to all of council to provide them an opportunity to offer any feedback. And this survey was emailed to council a second time, and staff have now received several replies and will continue to update this bylaw for council's consideration at a future meeting. Registration and hotel accommodations have been revised following a motion at last month's regular council meeting appointing Councillor Bill Evans as the substitute for Councillor Bruce Finney at FCM. Bylaw number 160, 160A and 160B, a bylaw relating to the Sackville Waterfowl Park, was discussed, noting that with the recent acquisition of the Lund property, staff recognized the need to include that property within the meets and bounds description of the Waterfowl Park. And staff incorporated the amendments, being bylaw 160A and 160B, to the original bylaw, together with assigning this bylaw a new number and providing up-to-date mapping as Schedule A and Schedule B. And a motion to consider the first reading will be coming forward at this meeting. And bylaw number 46, a bylaw relating to buildings in the town of Sackville, was discussed, and planner Laurie Bickford noted that this bylaw was very dated. With the new Community Planning Act taking effect on January 1st, 2018, staff felt the need to update this bylaw to reflect the changes in the new act. Staff also reviewed this bylaw for any housekeeping items and assigned a new number, and a motion to consider first reading will be coming forward at this meeting, which it has. And that's the report.
Questions on the report? None. I think you have a motion, Councillor Butcher?
I do. I move that council give first reading in name only to bylaw number 265, a bylaw relating to the Sackville Waterfowl Park.
Moved by Councillor Butcher, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aitken. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Butcher. And we move to personnel. Councillor Black, please.
Thank you. The personnel report can be found on page 52 of the package. The following is an overview of recent activities in the past month. We met on March 7th of 2019. During the pay periods of February, there were 35 permanent employees and 2 temporary employees. The grievance on call-out provisions has been referred to arbitration, and that remains outstanding. The application deadline for the position of assistant clerk recently closed, so the process to fill the position is underway. Sherry Rideout was hired recently as payroll clerk on a contractual basis to backfill the vacancy due to a maternity leave. And this past month, a cybersecurity awareness training session was held for all employees that use computers. And that's the report.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Seeing no questions, we will move to item J, Corporate Affairs Strategic Development. Deputy Mayor Aitken.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report for Corporate Affairs and Strategic Development appears on page 53, and I will have one motion after this. Landscape Consulting 4L Strategies are from the final stages of preparing the town's new business development strategy. They were going to present on last Monday night, but due to the storm, they will now be presenting the draft strategy at the special meeting on April 1st. Part of our strategic plan reporting process, we released our second annual residence survey during the week of February 11th, 2019. The survey will obtain feedback on various delivery service areas, and we're looking to increase the number of participants this year. There were 110 in 2018, and hope to build on the 77% satisfaction rate that we received in 2018. The survey is featured on the website, was distributed via our social media channels, covered in the local, local newspaper, and featured on the Civic Center signboard, and a reminder is placed at reception, all in an effort to reach a wide variety of residents. We are looking forward to the results of this survey. On February 26, 2019, the staff attended a presentation on the new Tourism Visitor Economy Master Plan for Southeast New Brunswick that the Mayor talked about earlier, and this sets the stage for the Regional Development Marketing Organization. The consultants had a busy day. They presented the same thing 3 times, and it's been adopted by the city and by the Service Commission, and we look forward to a future meeting of the steering committee to which staff belong. Towns received a request from the Sackville Rod and Gun Club for permission to continue using Landing Road Claybird Range. The club is renewing their approval to operate within the Department of Public Safety, and while the range has continued to be inspected and recognized for its safety, there are changes from the province's chief firearms officer, which the club must satisfy before the range can be approved. One such change is the need for a landowner's agreement. The Sackville Rod and Gun Club has operated their Claybird shooting range at 32 Landing Road since the early 1990s. This location is owned by the town of Sackville, and no motion to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a lease agreement with the club will be presented after this report, which will be subject to the club receiving approval from the RCMP and Department of Environment and Local Government. And finally, the Community Partnerships Working Group met on March 5th, 2019, and the group used the session to reflect on the awareness initiatives undertaken in 2018 and set priorities for the 2019-2020 school year, and the group again meet in early summer. And that's the report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions on the report? Hearing none, you have a motion?
Yes, I do. I move the council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and seal the license agreement between the town of Sackville and the Sackville Rod and Gun Club for the use of 32 Landing Road in order to continue operating their Claybird shooting range, subject to the Sackville Rod and Gun Club obtaining approval of the RCMP and the New Brunswick Department of Environment and Local Government.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken, seconded by Councillor Finney. Councillor Evans, please.
I want to clarify that this is something that's been going on for a long time. There is no problem, but their regulations have changed, and now they require formal permission from us, which we have tacitly given them before. So this is, it's kind of like we've been, we're trying to get easements for property that we use. We're trying to formalize something that's of long standing. Nothing's changing. It's, yeah.
So there are, as you say, requirements which is in this motion about the Department of Environment questions of concern and safety concerns which are being dealt with by the police. And that's subject to their approval, this will take effect. So I think your point is well taken. Someone else is dealing with those issues than we are. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. There was no new business. There's no new business to be added here. We will go to question period. Mr. Wark.
Yeah, I need clarification in 3 areas. And the first one has to do with paving and patching. I'm wondering, I'm still trying to understand how much, well, first of all, what did the bid come in at and how was it reduced?
Mr. Acton?
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. The lowest bid came in from Cost and Paving, Amherst, Nova Scotia, at $325,823.75, HST included. And it is, that was the total based on the quantity that, it's a quantity bid type tender. So based on the quantity that we specified in the tender, that was the tender bid. So we'll be reducing the quantity of the tonnage that is awarded to them by the approximately $50,000 to match budget.
And do you anticipate that with this amount of money, you'll be able to do all the patching that's needed?
We're going to do our best, yes. We're going to stretch the patching as far as we can, given the road conditions. There's several things that we do look at. There are some areas that have small alligator cracks versus potholes and areas that are broke up bad. Obviously, we'll be focusing on the areas that are broke up and potholes. Some of the alligator cracking that may be left for another year, but we all know what happens with those alligator cracks over time. They produce potholes as well. So those are some things that we evaluate as we move through the patching process, and we'll continue to do that throughout the patching contract.
Thank you. I've never heard that term, alligator cracking. What does it mean?
Well, you've seen small cracks in the asphalt on the streets where there's not a pothole. It's just cracking of the asphalt. That's what we call alligator cracking.
Kind of looks like the exterior of an alligator.
Oh, okay, thank you. The gas tax money will be used for paving again. Is that then, would it be fair to report then that that will be the total paving budget for the next year or for that period?
That is correct. That is the patching budget under the gas tax for 2019 only. Paving, not patching.
Yeah, and when we say paving, we really mean repaving so that the street is fixed and you wouldn't anticipate there being potholes on it once it's all fixed up.
Yes, that's correct. It's resurfacing. Typically, it's about an 1.5 inch lift of seal asphalt that goes over top of the existing road. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, we have done several kilometers over the last number of years throughout the town to buy us, anywhere from 8 to 10 years extra life out of that road.
Thank you. I have a question on the hotel levy and the whole strategy that is being developed for marketing, tourism marketing for the region. Did I understand correctly, Mr. Mayor, when you said that the tourism industry locally is strongly supportive of a hotel levy?
That's what, there was a group that met in the area here, and the feedback that the staff and the consultants heard was, yes, this would be very good for our business here. So they didn't have the details at the time. They were just talking about, would this, if it came out this way like others, would it be helpful? And that was the feedback we heard from them, yes.
And what are the next steps in the development of this strategy as you, I gather that you develop it and then you'll ask the province for enabling legislation when you've got the plan in place?
Well, there is 7 steps in that recommended plan. Some of them are concurrent, and they're now putting together the board that will lay out what that work plan will be and who's going to be acting on what at what point.
Board will be a private sector board.
Well, there will be an
business.
interim board because we
Yeah.
have to create one and appoint people to it, and then they will turn over into the business community, yes.
Okay, thank you. And finally, the Lund property. I just have 2 questions there. I need an update on where that stands. So there was to be a trail there and I think a memorial marker. How's that going? And my second question on that is, With the acquisition of the Lund property, how much larger does that make the waterfowl park? If, maybe you don't know what the percentage would be. Is it a third larger, or do you know?
Mr. Burke, please.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Just to give you an update on the Lund property, we did start the trail in the fall of last year. Fortunately or unfortunately, winter came a bit early, which caused us to push things back until 2019. We have the stone, which is ready to be erected on site, and we've arranged to have the carving done, which will take place once the stone is in place. So once the snow is gone, that's kind of priority number one for our Parks and Facilities Department with respect to the Lund property itself. We have some exciting news. The Rotary Club has agreed to establish a legacy project connecting the Lund property to the waterfowl park. So we're going to be working very closely with them over the coming weeks as well in terms of a design and then eventual construction of that important connection. So there will be a trail finished up with crusher dust from Squire Street into the high point of the property where the cairn will be installed and engraved. And then we expect to extend that trail over to the existing waterfowl park with the trail connection with the assistance of the Rotary Club.
Oh, and that's the legacy project you refer to?
Correct.
Yeah, and do you happen to know, I suppose I could work it out myself by looking at the acreage of how much larger the waterfowl park is because of that property?
We can do that calculation.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that calculation and get it for you. We have all of the PID numbers that were added to
Sure.
it, so just a simple little bit of research and we'll flip that to you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions from the audience? No? Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, I move that council adjourn the public portion of the regular meeting and move in camera.
Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Tower. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.